What should be NATO policy after America exits from Afghanistan?
First of all, to stay committed to ensure that Afghanistan doesn't once again becomes a safe haven for international terrorists. Because we have to remember that the reason why NATO allies joined the United States going into Afghanistan in 2001 was a direct response to a terrorist attack on the United States. And hundreds of thousands of Canadian, European NATO soldiers and partners have served alongside US soldiers there for 20 years. And for those 20 years, we have prevented Afghanistan from being a safe haven for international terrorists. So we need to ensure that's also the case in the future. So we will monitor the new rulers in Kabul very closely, and we will also make it clear that NATO allies have the capabilities to strike from long distance terrorist groups if they try to re-establish themselves in Afghanistan.
Because of the time constraint this morning, Secretary General, I really want to focus on the important resolute support mission, the idea of the Italians in the west of Afghanistan, the Germans up north where the Northern Alliance is. And then there's a Turkish flag in the middle providing support, NATO support to Afghanistan. Now Turkey is in a unique position. Explain NATO's relationship with Mr. Erdogan and the new Afghanistan.
So NATO has ended its military presence in Afghanistan as the United States has, and I would like to thank and praise and commend all those men and women who have served there for so many years. And their efforts and their service was not in vain. Turkey has played a key role in operating the airport, and Turkey has offered to continue to support the airport, and the airport in Kabul is vital. It's a vital link to the world to get humanitarian aid in, but also to enable safe passage for those who want to leave. And NATO allies have strongly stated that we will not forget all those who are still in Afghanistan, who supported us, who are at risk, and we will continue to work to ensure that they can leave Afghanistan.
Will that mean NATO's support directly on the many adjacent borders of Afghanistan to continue to get people out?
So NATO allies are, first of all, working on how to make sure that the airport can continue to operate. Second, we expect Taliban to live up to their commitments, both on safe passage, but also on open land borders, and of course also what they have promised when it comes to preventing terrorist organizations being able to reconstitute themselves in Afghanistan.
If you're just joining us on radio and television, Jens Stoltenberg with us, the former Prime Minister of Norway, Secretary General of NATO. We're honored that he could join us on this historic morning. Mr. Secretary General, NATO is not so much in search of a mission, but it is a morph. It is a changeable Europe, a changeable NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization as we move into 2022. All of that buttressed up against a question of migration, a question of refugees across Europe. I would suggest this is the third rail. How can NATO support its nations in continental Europe confronting a new round of mass refugees and migration?
Our main task is to help to stabilize our neighborhood, and that's the reason why we are working with partners in North Africa, in the Middle East, to help to stabilize countries in our neighborhood, because when our neighbors are more stable, we are more secure. We also have some presence, for instance, in the Aegean, where we help to implement the agreement between Turkey and the European Union on illegal migration over the Aegean Sea from Turkey into the rest of Europe. But NATO's main purpose is to make sure that we stand together, 30 allies, one for all and all for one. This is important for Europe, but it's also important for the United States. In a world with a shifting global balance of power with the rise of China, it is a huge advantage for the United States to have 29 friends and allies in NATO. No other major power has anything like that. And therefore, a strong NATO, Europe and North America standing together is important both for North America and for Europe.
How can NATO assist your members in what we're hearing interview to interview? General Kimmett of the United States, Ambassador Bolton, Congressman Davidson, and others, they all circle back to a relationship of a new Afghanistan with China and with Russia. How can NATO respond to that perceived new alliance?
So for us, it's obvious that all the countries in the region, and that of course also includes China, a neighbor of Afghanistan, and Russia not so far away, it is in their interest to have a stable Afghanistan, and Afghanistan where terrorist groups like ISIS-K cannot work, establish themselves, operate, plan terrorist attacks against any other country. So there are many differences between Russia, China, NATO allies and other countries in the region, but we all have a common interest in preventing Afghanistan from once again, as it was before we went in 2001, becoming a place where terrorist organizations can plan, organize, conduct terrorist attacks against other countries.
Mr. Secretary General, Angela Merkel of Germany speaks of an existential need to have a Kabul airport open. You mentioned it earlier. I'd like in our final moments here to speak about the new Kabul airport. How do you perceive, and you mentioned Turkey and their affiliation of protecting and sustaining it over the years of this war, how do you perceive a new Kabul airport with NATO's support?
NATO allies are strongly supporting the efforts to make sure that we have a functional operational airport in Kabul. Turkey is playing a key role. I discussed this just yesterday with the Turkish foreign minister, and I would like to praise Turkey for the key role both in supporting, helping, facilitating the evacuation, getting people out from Kabul, out from Afghanistan into the airport over the last days, but also now the offer they have made to help to operate the airport. Because the airport is so essential, both for aid coming in, but also for people to be able to leave.
But how will we affect that? I mean, America sits stunned over what occurred yesterday. We all knew it was coming, and yet particularly those of us with an understanding of 1975 are stunned. How do we actually affect a reopening with the Taliban?
As we work, NATO is not planning to deploy any forces or personnel at Kabul airport. We have ended our military presence there as an alliance and as, for instance, allies like the United States have done. But we are working with other countries, including a NATO ally, Qatar, and they have what I will call operational contacts with Taliban to see if we can help ensuring that the airport continues to function.